So thank you for joining us today. We're going to begin by asking you to imagine a restaurant. Think about a restaurant that you really enjoy going to, currently or maybe from your childhood, but a place that has meaning and that is a favorite place to be. Now, imagine that place. Think about it, describing its physical characteristics. What does it look like? How is it decorated? How big is it? How much space is there between the tables? Who visits there? What are the people like? Think about what's happening back of house. The chef, the food, sitting in the coolers and on the prep table. Imagine the dishwasher and the person doing the dishes, the interactions between the wait staff, people coming in the front door, hungry, excited to eat, excited to be in their favorite place. Now think about seeing this place as a living whole. You've got people and food, and that's coming from all over the country, maybe all over the world. Maybe it's very local food. Maybe that's what's important to you. But it's coming from somewhere. Someone grew the food, someone transported the food, someone picked it, packaged it, brought it in, prepared it, washed it, cooked it, and brought it to your table. You're there probably with someone else or a group of friends. You're having a conversation, as are the other people who are in the restaurant with you. And this place has been here over time. Who started it and why? What were their hopes and dreams? What was their vision of having a restaurant? Be the different people in the restaurant. Feel them. Feel what it's like to be sitting there at different times of life, in different life circumstances, playing different roles. What do people love about this place, and why is it important to them? And now ask yourself to reflect for a moment on what is the restaurant? Is it walls and tables and chairs and a menu and food? Is it a place where people gather and that has meaning and significance in their lives? What is the role of the restaurant in your life, in the life of the owner, in the life of the people who work there, in the lives of the people who grew the food? What is the role of this restaurant in the community? So for the remainder of this course, I'd like you to select an application activity, a project that you're working on, or just something that you're doing in your life. It could be as simple as a family gathering, celebrating a friend's birthday, or maybe it's a building project that you're working on. Maybe it's an initiative at work. Maybe it's your company, but pick something to use as your focus. And if you haven't already, grab a notebook and a pen, and then throughout this session, you're going to be applying some of the key concepts of regenerative development and design to your chosen project. Let's start by looking into this word regenerate or regenerative. The dictionary tells us that regeneration or to regenerate is a verb, and it means to bring new and more vigorous life. And at CLEAR, we define regenerative development as building the capacity and capability in people, communities, and other natural systems to adapt, evolve, and thrive. And we're going to spend the next few minutes really leaning into the idea of adapting, evolving, and thriving. So let's start with adapt. For your project or activity, what does it mean for that project to adapt to changing conditions? Think about perhaps your own life, how you have adapted to changing conditions. Maybe it's having a new boss. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe it is simply market conditions changing. We are all constantly being asked to adapt. And today we have increasing questions about how do we adapt to climate change? How do we adapt to globalization and technology? So there are many ways that we need to think about that, and there are better ways to adapt than others, right? We can resist the change. We can adapt in ways that degrade our sense of worth, our viability as human beings, or we can adapt in ways that allow us to form new views of who we are and how we hope to be. Which kind of brings us into the idea of evolution. So go back to your project, but do a little bit of work to distinguish between adapting and evolving. They're not quite the same thing. So for the organization that you work for, you can adapt to the environment that you work in, right? You can also use your position or your project to evolve who you are as a practitioner and to simultaneously evolve not only who you are, but who the company is and what the role is that you play within your field. So how might your project serve an evolutionary role and go beyond adapting to environmental conditions, but to play an evolutionary role, which leads us to thriving. Think about what it means for your project or your initiative to really thrive. What does it mean for you to thrive through working on your project or activity? What does it mean for the others who are involved to thrive and for the project to thrive over time? Can you begin to see that in the same way or in a similar way that perhaps you saw your restaurant? You probably saw your restaurant as a thriving place where there's energy, there's vitality, there's connection and meaning. There are things happening there. So how does your effort result in thriving over time? Think of a past project now for a minute. Move away from the current work that you're doing and think about a past project or activity and jot down what were the intended or actual effects or outcomes for that project over time. You initiated something or were part of initiating something. What do you hope would happen? How did you see your work moving forward? Did you see it as sustaining? Did you envision a certain trajectory into the future? Think perhaps of a building project where there were systems that were designed, daylighting, air quality, space planning, electric lighting design, all of those things, and you envision people using that space in a particular way over time. Did that happen? Did people use that space in a way that was intended? Maybe not. Maybe it sort of devolved over time, or it lost relevance. The fancy control system that you thought was going to automate everything and make everyone's life simpler was shut down or not fully utilized. Or that people put up partitions and sound attenuation and had to make accommodations because the space didn't suit them just right. Now, envision your project in a way that you could see it improving and evolving over time. So it's not static. It's not just what you expected it would be. It became more than you ever thought it could be. People became deeply invested and engaged and caring about the project in a way that it transformed their lives, their work, and it transformed the community. It transformed the field into something that was more than you could have expected. Now, how might you have built that capacity into the project from the beginning? If you had in mind not the idea that it would sustain in a particular way into the future, but if you had in mind that your job was to build capacity in the team to evolve this place and the work in this place increasingly over time, how would that change the way that you did your work? How might you do things differently if you were attempting to build capacity for this project or this family or your relationships with someone to adapt, evolve, and thrive over time? That is regenerative development work. So we're going to look at a scale that helps us think about this and helps us to define regeneration and organize this concept a little bit more neatly in our minds. When we think about compliance from a building perspective, this means meeting our minimum building codes and meeting the minimum expectations of our client. And then we work towards efficiency, which is about doing things better and minimizing our impacts. So a lot of the sustainability and green building movement has been focused in this realm of efficiency, reducing the amount of energy, improving indoor air quality, and building a better building. When we move into the realms of net positive and regeneration, we're looking beyond improving how the building operates, even moving beyond the notion of net zero energy or net zero water. And we're thinking about what is the effect that our building is having on the greater system, or what is the potential that it can contribute. So think about how to maximize the positive societal impact. You have to move beyond the project boundary in order to consider what the positive effects can be for the greater community. It may be educational, it may be transforming building codes, it may be transforming markets so that they're more ready to take on increasingly important and relevant sustainability work. The key is that it has to move beyond the project boundary and look at the impact that we're having at a larger societal scale. So that brings us to regenerative design. Now that we've talked about regenerative development and what that process is, then designers specifically are engaging in the art and process of planning and creating based on a deep understanding of place, which includes ecosystems, culture, the aspirations of the client and the owner, the aspirations of the community or the field that they intend to serve. and then using technologies and strategies that result in enduring capability to adapt, evolve, and thrive. And we use a framework called lenses as a structured process to guide regenerative development. With lenses, skilled facilitators guide individuals and groups toward deeper understanding, relevance, and context for their project in the role of the greater whole. Lenses is made up of 3 lenses and then works as a whole all together. The first lens is the vitality lens, and that lens is focused on building team capacity for regenerative work. Regeneration is a bit of a different paradigm, and it takes time and focus in order to get people to think in a new way. So the vitality lens helps us to do that and helps us to distinguish between compliance, efficiency, net positive, and regeneration. And then the second lens is the flows lens. The flows lens helps us to understand context, key relationships, and to see our project as a whole living system. So thinking back to the restaurant example, you are starting to see the restaurant as a whole living system that included everything from the farmers who are growing the food that was brought to the restaurant, that was created and crafted by the chef, delivered to your table by people with lives of their own, to serve a role within the context of your own personal life and within the role of the community. That is about starting to see places as whole living systems, expanding our view just a bit. And then beginning to see where are those key points within the system where we can really make a difference. The third lens is the foundation lens. And the foundation lens helps us to develop shared principles and vision. It helps us as a team to explore that which is most dear, what we care to create in the world, and why. And those shared principles become the tools for making decisions and for evaluating our progress towards our intended outcomes. And then when you use all 3 of the lenses together, you identify the unique regenerative potential for your project or for your initiative or your activity.
Hi, I'm Jody Lane, a lenses practitioner in Austin, Texas. A community in East Austin developed a thriving food forest in the middle of downtown Austin using regenerative strategies. At the Festival Beach Food Forest, there are no fences, so the fruits, nuts, and medicinal herbs growing there are open to the public. Today, if you were there, you could see neighbors strolling through, volunteers coming from all over Austin to add mulch. The elderly that live adjacent to the food forest are harvesting seeds and plants and growing them in their windowsills. And we're even getting researchers from Germany sending us emails asking us if they can collect data and find out how we accomplished this reclamation of our public park. But this food forest wasn't always there. So let me back up and tell you how we used the lenses framework and a regenerative mindset to create it from the ground up. We started with working in wholes rather than parts. By working in wholes, we heard the challenges that the neighbors were having with a 90-acre master plan of their beloved park along the river's edge. As neighbors ourselves, we started to host gatherings in our backyards with big pots of soup and plenty of healthy shared food to find out what we wanted the master plan to say in the end. We heard things about dismantling the much-loathed power plant, and we started to ask each other what the parkland could provide the neighbors, what it could provide all of Austin, what it could provide for the plants and the animals, and even the watershed. Many gatherings ensued in backyards, churches, and in the park itself, which allowed us to hear the activating forces, the will of the people that loved the park, the families, mostly Hispanic, that lined the picnic areas every Sunday with bouncy houses that the kids all played in. But they and the others in the community were concerned that the master planning process wasn't going to end up well for them. They'd been there before, they'd seen master plans come through, and the city hadn't followed through with the process. They'd lost faith in the city, and they were angry. They were angry that the power plant was finally being decommissioned and cleaned up now that the affluent white people were moving in, and rightly so. Because we had the lenses framework and many other regenerative facilitation strategies under our belt, we were able to bring about the potential. How did we do that? We went about discovering uniqueness. We started to ask lots of questions to discover the particular uniqueness of that place, those families, the elderly that lived in a center next to the parkland. We started to just look at the natural, social, and economic systems and found out what they really care about: preserving tranquility, access to healthy food, and on and on. We talked to Michael Monreal, who lived in the neighborhood for about 50 years, and he told us that he remembers running through the alleys as a boy with his buddies. And they had baskets. They were collecting the peaches and plums that were growing along the alleys because their mothers were told by another mother that her trees were full and they needed to come get them. So we discovered that food and a sharing economy was also part of the essence of the place, and caring about their kids. They cared about tranquility. They cared about food for everybody. So by listening for potential and uniqueness, we had a foothold together. These are some of the boards that we generated for workshops with powerful questions from the Vitality and Flows lens. We asked questions like, what is transportation like for you and your family? Do you walk? Do you ride the 2122 bus? We asked who else would like this conversation. We mapped out the flow of the wind, the water, the stormwater runoff. We ended up with a beautiful collage of faces that represented many different stakeholders and organizations who normally would not have been in the same room together. They all saw potential for coming together to co-create something in the master plan that came from the community, but was a benefit to the larger community. When we brought all the many lenses and systems together in this way, the vision and values came out powerfully. The food forest was born out of a vision that in 2022, there would be a huge feast in East Austin. We called it East Feast 2022. It is to be accessible by all, provided by the community and the land, and it's going to happen in a few years. We've been at it about 6 years now, and it's beautiful. The trees are growing, nature classes for kids are happening there, the homeless are pulling weeds from under the benches and tending to the place at night. And a Native American medicine woman hosts a plant walk every first Saturday to educate people on what's growing and how you can make elderberry tea to fight the flu. So the best part is that it's growing on its own now. It continues to evolve with every new volunteer, every new idea or installation. As the weather events come and go, people and things and plants and water comes and go, it has a life of its own. It's beautiful.
There are 5 big ideas of regeneration, and these are embedded within the lenses framework. The first one is working in wholes rather than parts. Seeing the whole restaurant, seeing the whole project, the whole family at work, not as a collection of parts, but as a whole living set of nested systems. Then it's about accounting for uniqueness. What is your particular role and value that you contribute? How is that restaurant specifically different than the other restaurants? What is its unique role, and what is the community in which it sits or serves? The third is in shifting from problems to potential. Too often, we spend time thinking about problems that exist as the result of a world that has been. There is something different about exploring potential of what can be, what can become. So think about your own life, and if I asked you to tell me about all of your problems that you're facing, now tell me about the potential that you feel inside, that you're working to realize as a human being, as a friend, as a professional, as a human. Those are very different questions. Fourth is being of service, and being of service to something that's greater than ourselves. When we do that, we draw inspiration for change that is more powerful than when we are being solely self-serving. So asking, what is the service that we are playing? What is the service that our project is playing to something greater than the project boundary or the scope of work? And then finally, the fifth big idea is moving from an idea of being separate from to being aligned with nature and living systems. So living systems serve as the source of inspiration, as well as the question of how do humans play a contributive, beneficial role in natural living systems. What is our role as a species, like a hummingbird, or like the oxen, or the orangutan? What is humans' role in contributing to the health and vitality of natural living systems?
Hi, I'm Brian Dunbar, Executive Director at the Institute for the Built Environment at Colorado State and Chairman of the Board for CLEAR. We hope you're as excited about regenerative development and the Lenses framework as we are. Regeneration is quickly catching on around the world, from addressing climate change to agriculture to economic development. Regeneration is seen as a powerful idea to reshape the way that people are thinking about sustainability and about how to create a thriving and healthy future. If you're interested in learning more about regenerative development and Lenses, check out our website, where you can find various resources to continue learning. You could download the Lenses Overview Guide. You could read pretty inspiring stories and case studies about projects that use Lenses to guide their design and development. And you could download the Lenses rubrics. That's a great way to start exploring the potential for regenerative project outcomes. And even check out our field guide, Becoming a Regenerative Practitioner. That could help you bring regenerative action into your work and career. We offer several levels of courses to take you from beginner to expert practitioner, and even Lenses facilitator or Lenses teacher. And there's a growing number of books and other publications that can also help you gain a higher understanding of regeneration. I'm particularly fond of Designing for Hope. Isn't that a positive way to look into our future? So whatever your next steps may be, we hope that you've picked up a few ideas about regeneration, the role you can play, and the potential that your projects and your organizations have to make a powerful, positive difference in the world. Are you ready for the next steps? Download the resources, sign up for our newsletter, register for an upcoming course, and we look forward to seeing you soon.